Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Ashritha, and today we're going to be starting our day two of our Python session, which is called target practice. So before we start, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, everyone. So last year, as you all remember, we did Scratch, and I think as you all remember, Scratch is a block coding language. So when you're doing Scratch, you're using blocks to run the code or to make the code do any of the things you want. And I think you already went through one day of Python learning where you learned about the language of Python and why we're learning it and how it's closer to the English language, which is all true. And today we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into the language of Python. It's a little bit more complex than Scratch, I think, as you've noticed. So some things will take a couple of like much more time to learn compared to Scratch because it's much more complex, but it's definitely worth it to learn because in the future you'll definitely need it a lot more. So today's session is called target practice. So there's a lot of steps in today's code. So make sure that you're listening because I'll also be talking about the importance of every line of code that I'll be talking about. So make sure we listen. So today we're going to be creating a game basically where we have a target and our arrow is going to be I guess like placed randomly on the target, and if you click your mouse, then the arrow will launch and you'll get a certain amount of points based on where your arrow is in the target. So I think the easiest thing to do is to demonstrate it. So I'll just demonstrate the code first. So this is what your code is going to look like. It's a lot more different than Scratch, so it'll take a little bit of time to get used to. It's a lot of different, like letters and all that stuff too, colors, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to. But this is what the game's going to look like. So you have a target, which you're going to make this using Python. You're going to make these shapes using Python. And as you can see, there's like this brown dot that's going all over the screen. This is your randomized arrow. So this is your arrow that's going to be in random positions. And when you click the screen, based on which circle of the target that you hit, it'll give you a certain amount of points. So for example, when I hit this red circle, I'll get 200 points. If I hit the blue, I'll get I think 100 points. Oh, 50 points. And if I hit the yellow, I get 500 points. And if I don't hit the target, I get 0 points. So that's basically what we're gonna do in the game today. And we're gonna be learning a lot of different fundamentals of Python using this code. So you can apply these to different games as well, not just this one. So the first line of code we're going to start with is the no stroke. And basically what's going to happen is in this certain in Python, you're going to have these definitions of functions. So what these functions are, they're kind of like folders. Do you know when you're in school and you have different folders or binders for each subject? So you have an English folder or you have a math folder and you have your papers for math in your math folder and again your papers for English in your English folder. In the same way, Python has these folders or functions where you can put your code for each function within the function when you define it. So this def setup is defining the setup function, and what it's doing is you can only use whatever code you have in your setup function, you can only use it in your setup function. You can't use it anywhere else in the code. That's why it's in the setup folder. So it's a little bit hard to understand, but as you go more in Python, you'll understand more about functions. So what this no stroke does is it's making sure when you draw the shapes on the screen, like when we drew the target or when we drew the background, it'll make sure that they're seamless, they stick together, so you won't see a black line surrounding them. Because usually if you don't have the no stroke line, you'll see the black line surrounding the shape. So this just makes it look better. This is honestly optional, but it just so your game looks better and people would want to play it more. So it makes it look more professional. So now we're going to draw our shapes. So for our background and for our target, we're going to start with the grass. So do you see how there's like the grass, which is, there's a sky and grass in the background, which is just a rectangle, which is light green. So all you have to do is type in these lines of code, fill light green. This specifies the color of the shape that you want to make. And this rect and the dimensions are that you want to make a rectangle, and these are the dimensions of your rectangle. You're not going to know the dimensions of the shapes you want to make for your games on the first try. So it's mostly trial and error. You have to keep on trying so the shapes fit the screen properly, and then you can see if, the shape works or not. Coding is a lot of the times about trial and error. So it's a lot of trying over and over again to see if it works to your liking. So these two lines of code create the rectangle for our grass, and we write this code in the draw function. The reason why we write it in the draw function or the file, like I explained before, is because we want to draw these on the screen as our background. So this makes the code a lot more organized if someone wants to read it. In this same draw function, we want to draw our target stand, which is the bottom brown part of the target. So this is just the color. It's sienna. It's the same thing as brown. You can use brown or sienna. It's the same thing. The coding plot Raspberry Pi just calls it sienna, but it's honestly the same thing. And we want to draw a triangle. So here are the dimensions of the triangle. I guess the numbers will seem a little bit more confusing, but as you like look more into coding and understand it more, it won't be that confusing because there's like numbers and you have to understand the coordinates, but as long as you understand it after with trial and error, you'll understand it more. And again, this goes in the draw function. So this is for our target. And this is for, how I was talking about the points, right? The points of the target. So the outer circle, the inner circle, and the innermost circle, these you have to draw three circles, which are the blue circle, red, and yellow. These represent the outermost to innermost circles, like this. And they all go in the draw function because we want to draw them on the screen. And this draw function is only for our background and our target. So it's not going to do anything else with the code yet. Now we're going to create another function or file called shoot arrow. When I clicked the screen, the code shot the arrow and that gave me the certain amount of points. But to know where it shot, we have to create this function called shoot arrow. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add code to draw our circle for the arrow at the coordinates 200, 200. And this is just to test our code and to see if it's working because we'll change it later. Do you know like the circle was jumping all across the screen? Well, we want to do that, but first we're just testing it to see if it appears on the screen. So we're only going to give it the coordinates 200, 200, and we're also going to create the shoot arrow function in this draw function. So what the shoot arrow does is it's going to make sure that the code actually runs the function. And this is the function. And this is what calling shoot arrow means. So we're calling this function, we're running this whole piece of code in this draw. So the whole code runs it. I'll explain it more later just so it's easy to understand. So it might be a little bit confusing first. And now we're gonna make sure that the arrow aims randomly. Now that it works on our screen, we're gonna make it random integer. Rand int means random integer. So in these coordinates, it'll create random coordinates for the arrow to bounce on the screen. So it's easier, it's more of a game instead of just being in one place. And we're also going to create something that's called global hit color. Hit color is going to be a variable. Sometimes in math, we have a variable, right? X, and it says find the value of X. In the same way, we're creating a variable called hit color. And what this does is wherever our circle is on the screen, it can get the color where the circle is. And that helps us know what amount of points we should get. So global means, so do you know how I said if you have a certain code in one function, you can't use it anywhere else? Well, if you have global, you can use it anywhere else in the function. As long as you have global in front of your variable, you can use the variable anywhere in the code. So we're going to say that this variable equals to the color of where the arrow is. And we're going to, this is honestly not needed, print hit color. We're just using it to test the code. But this hashtag means we comment the code out, which means it's not going to run in the code. And this is what the code looks like for if you press the mouse. When I press the mouse, it got the code for the arrow. In the same way, if you press the mouse, depending on what color it hits, it'll say how many points I got. So if I hit the blue, which is the outer circle, I would only get 50 points. If I hit red, which is the closer one, I will get 200. And if I hit yellow, then I will get, which is the middle one, I would get 500. And if I didn't get any of these colors, if I didn't even hit the target, I would get no points. So that means else. So this is called an if else statement. If I hit blue, then that's what I will get. And elif means basically the same thing as if, except you can't put if, you can't put the same if underneath it. You have to put elif, so it continues the function or it continues the statement. So elif, if I hit red, then this would happen. If I hit yellow, this would happen. And then else, if I didn't hit blue, red, or yellow, which is if I didn't hit the target at all, then I would get no points. And the last step is to check your work and make sure that if you didn't hit a certain color in the work color on the target, then it would print no points. So I'm just gonna explain this whole thing with the code just so it's much easier to understand. Because I kind of went through the code, so I want to make sure everyone understands it. So make sure to pay attention because I'm actually going to use the code in this step. Here is the Raspberry Pi, the actual platform you're going to use for Python. So how you're gonna get here is when you get to the target practice path, you're going to scroll down a little bit and it's gonna say, this is project 2 of 6 in the introduction to Python path. So you're gonna scroll down, you're gonna click next, and it's gonna say open the target practice starter project. Don't open this. It's easier to open the code editor. So once you open this, then you'll come to this screen, which has all your code. So I think the most important thing is it's a little more complicated if you hit target practice starter project, just because it's a little harder to follow the steps. So I recommend hitting the use code editor step. This is really important. So when you hit it, you'll be here. And you're going to start with this code. Make sure you keep this run frame rate equals 2. If you don't keep this, your code's not going to run. So make sure we keep this in the bottom of our code and your directions will be on this side of the screen. So all the directions I was talking about, they'll be on this side of the screen, so it's easier for you to follow. So now I can explain it easier. So make sure you're on this screen. If you need help getting to the screen, definitely let me know. There'll be a Q&A section, question section at the end of this segment, so it's easier to understand. But when you're here, make sure you follow these steps and apply the same code to this screen. So here are all here's all the code I was talking about. And the way to actually run this code is you have to click run here. It's okay if you see execution interrupted. This is not like an error or anything. That's like normal. So you have to click run to test your code and then the game will start on this side of the screen. And when you click the mouse, then it'll show the certain amount of points you get. Okay, so this is the end of the presentation. There's definitely a lot of information here, so you can definitely use this video once we send it to you, run it back and understand the functions and the statements that I talked about. The main concepts you need to know here are functions. Number one, functions. Functions are always when it says define, and then you have a name here, and then you have these two parentheses and the colon. That's a function. And a function is like, remember, a school file. When you have like an English file or a math file, in the same way, it's like a file. All your code is going to be in your function. Number two, you have to know is how to make shapes on the screen. So this fill light green rectangle shape is this green grass that you see here in the code, this green grass. And these circles These are all circles. This is the target. And this shoot arrow is also really important because this actually helps us play the game by clicking our mouse. Okay? And the third thing you should know is global. So you should know global. Global makes sure that you can use the same variable in only one function. You can use it all throughout the code. That's really important. And the fourth thing you should know is if-else statements. You should know about if if this happens, and you should also know how to use elif for the same, it's the same thing as if. And else is if any of the if statements aren't true, then you print out else, which is you missed no points because you didn't hit the target. And make sure you keep this at the bottom of your code because if you don't keep this run frame rate equals to, it'll be there once you open your code, but make sure you keep it there. Okay. And that's all for the presentation. It might be a little bit confusing, but once you're in Raspberry Pi, like the Raspberry Pi thing, and you start to understand it more, then it's a lot more easier. So before I end, any questions?
No questions, madam.
Okay, so that's good. Everyone can get started, and I'll be here for 30 more minutes. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Okay, everyone can get started.